Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday. It's August 29th, joined now by Michael Niziolek from the Bloomington Herald-Times, IU Sports Beat Writer. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Jim. How are you doing?
Good. The football season has arrived. We are, week 0 last week, but that doesn't really count. Week 1 upon us here, and more closer, Indiana will host the Ohio State Buckeyes to start the season off. So it certainly will be starting with a bang. Indiana not naming their starting quarterback, although Tom Allen did say that they have made that selection and they know who that is going forward. Not naming anything. We were talking about some of that. I don't, other than the quarterback position, I don't know how much that matters, but whatever. I think it's going to be Brendan Sorsby under center. Not that matters, but that's my guess. I think that's going to be the guy. But more importantly, in that game, we were in the last segment, we were talking about if, let's say that this game starts to get away from Indiana and they're in the third or the fourth quarter, I think they leave whomever that starter is in there to get as many reps as possible and just let them take every rep that they can.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you can make a switch, especially when the game's sort of, within reach, but even late. I mean, if it's the last maybe 5 minutes and you just want to protect the health of guys, I could see somebody sitting, but they're going to give the guy meaningful minutes or reps because they need it. Either one who wins the starting job doesn't have many career reps under their belt, and so they're going to need to get them, even if they're down 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns. This is a learning opportunity.
And the one question I do have, I wonder later on, as Dexter Williams becomes fully healthy, boy, that's going to add a wrinkle to this, because there's no way you can ignore what he brought to that offense last year when he was in.
Yeah, and I think Tom Allen has gone out of his way to mention Dexter too, saying we have a plan for him, in 4 to 5 weeks when he's going to be ready. They kind of put it around October, I think, even before midseason. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, he's come back for some devastating injuries, so it'll be interesting to see how quickly he can kind of get in game, get to the game speed and get back to normal. Because, practice is one thing, games are a different animal. But, Tom Allen has mentioned, Dexter Williams will be part of this offense in some way, shape, or form when he's ready. And even if he's not, the starter, you could imagine them trying to take advantage of some of the things he did last year in a package or two, if he's not, come back to the starting lineup.
Yeah, with obviously he is not considered much of a thrower. He threw, I think, two passes in the Michigan State game, and those came at the end of the game. So if he's in, you're thinking Wildcat or something along those lines, which could be predictable, but not necessarily when you have – the good thing is you have Jalen Lucas and Josh Henderson back there also. So there could be some deception with him, and I could see that, and that would not – I think that would be a smart move by Tom Allen, but he definitely moved that offense. That was the most shocking win that IU football's had for me in years. So it's going to be really, really interesting when he returns, because he obviously gives them another element, another something that Indiana has to have all these little extras that they need, that they can get. Jalen Lucas is one of those, but so is Dexter Williams now, and it's getting him back is going to be pretty important to this offense. And while I don't expect Indiana to do much against Ohio State, if they seem to be improved at every level, the defensive backfield, the both lines, and by better, they weren't that far off from being a decent team last year. They just couldn't run the ball or protect the quarterback. And it was just that simple. You can't be competitive with anybody if you can't do that. I think that they are going to be able to do that this year. Not necessarily in this game, but afterwards.
Yeah, and I think their goal, I mean, what you're trying to do is win the 50-50 games, right? Like the games against Louisville, Maryland, Illinois, Michigan State, Rutgers. All those games are the ones on your schedule where you say they're a coin flip essentially, especially the ones at home. You should be able to feel good about the roster you're putting up, that stacks up against those teams, and there's not much difference. And so I think with improved line play on both sides of the ball, you mentioned the offensive line, but defensive line as well. You're looking at trying to win those games. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State are still you're just going in with a disadvantage talent wise against those teams. But the rest of the schedule you look at, I mean, is there any other team, maybe Wisconsin a little bit, but in terms of, talent wise, India is not at a huge disadvantage. I think they feel good about their chances in a lot of those games, just because of the way they use the transfer portal this offseason.
Well, and speaking of that, the next thing I was going to say, Don Fisher, on with us each Monday, was on yesterday and gave me a stat that is astounding. He said of the top 50 players, transfer portal players expected to play, Indiana has 23 of them. And I'm like, I'm not sure where that number came from, but I was like, what? If that is true, that is a crazy number, and could give Indiana fans reason for optimism.
Well, I mean, their haul was significant. I mean, and essentially, I mean, what they replaced with in terms of that they very few returning starters, homegrown returning starters, but they landed a lot of returning starters from other teams. A guy like Andre Carter is a perfect example. So it's a way to add experience without sort of building it to try to flip some of these position groups that were struggling. I just think that they did land some nice pieces that if they can get into the EJ Williams on offense is another example. Just if those guys pay off, then I think you're looking at trying to get to that bowl game, that 6-win mark.
With there being another quarterback race, no matter who it is, like I said, I think it's going to be Brendan Sorsby that gets the call. But whomever, if there's the slightest bit of struggle, or the fans are going to be calling for somebody for the other. And I don't, like I said, it doesn't matter who it is, it'll be reversed. And I hate that for this quarterback, because that's added pressure. They already got a ton already. They don't need the extra, but that will be there if there's the slightest hint of not getting the job done.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to give them like 4 to 5 weeks here to sort of spread their wings and see where they're at, and then kind of evaluate. I wrote about that this morning because Walt Bell talked about, naturally that there's going to be that, from the outside, not from the inside, that, when they struggle, there's going to be a natural inclination. The most popular player on the team is the backup quarterback, especially with 2 young quarterbacks, both redshirt freshmen. And he said they're going to have to fight that. And it's a mentality. It's about having confidence in yourself. It's about knowing that you won the job, and that you don't have to worry about every mistake you make. But he said that's going to be a daily fight for those guys, whoever won the job, to sort of try to overcome that, because like you said, fans aren't going to be patient. And opening the season with Ohio State, you're probably going to have some mistakes going against a really, a defense that Walt Bell said has 11 players that are probably capable of playing in the NFL. So it's a tough spot, but they're going to have to weather the storm and try to get through that Indiana State game, and then try to kind of build from there.
Jim Harbaugh talked yesterday about revenue sharing for football players, which I think is inevitable. But is revenue sharing the thing that would be the greatest equalizer? Because if you look at the Big Ten, if is it the same amount of revenue that's being shared with each team? As long as it works that way, is that going to give teams like Indiana, whether it's Purdue or Indiana, even Rutgers, the opportunity to start to raise their programs because they'll have money to actually players can come to Indiana and get money then, just like they could go to Michigan or wherever.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't. I mean, I don't know how detailed Jim Harbaugh's proposal, or I guess he had a binder. I don't know how far in the weeds he got with how he did it, and I don't know what the system would look like. I mean, I think that's what the debate is, right? How do you do that? Do you carve out the Power Four eventually now because the Pac-12 is going away? Is that sort of where the revenue goes? And then is it equal between all those teams? Is it based on your share of the playoff money? I don't know. I don't know how that looks. And, I just think every step you make, it probably creates more disparity between the haves and have-nots. But being in the Big Ten, you're probably going to be, in the group of haves. So, there's already systematic advantages. You could pay players for their academics now. You could, the NIL stuff. So, I mean, you're already ahead of a lot of teams in the country, but that system, I'm not sure what it would look like. And I don't know, does it just favor the teams that, like Michigan or Ohio State, or does Indiana get that equal share? Like you said, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that'll be key, because right now Indiana is not the school that the NIL is geared towards football. It's geared towards basketball. It's a basketball school, always has been. And so the NIL, there's no way. I know it trails greatly in as far as the two. But if that were to happen and you had that to share and it was equal, that would be very, very interesting to see what would happen within the Big Ten, man. That would be great to see different teams each year. Like the NFL has each year 4 teams make the playoffs that did not make the playoffs the year before. It is a great rotation, and I'd love to see that in college football. In the Big Ten, I'd love to see someone besides Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State be the guys at the top. It would be fun to see that rotation. I know fans would love it, especially if it was their team.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that's that would take a major shift in things. I don't know that you're ever going to get to that point. I think parity, it's just not for college football. I just think that there are going to be teams that have built-in advantages. Even just with the tradition and sort of people are going
coaching.
Yeah, it's at times, and people are going to pick football schools over non-football schools with that tradition sometimes. So you're always going to have an advantage there. I mean, I don't know, to get to parity, I just don't see it in college football. I mean, I think you'd need to massively change the landscape, and I just don't see that. There always is going to be those 4 or 5 teams at the top. I just feel like.
Oh, Mike, you're raining on my parade, man.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm kidding. All right, so you've got a piece out now on Waltville and Indiana's offense.
Yeah, and wrote about too the Indiana feels like they're going to face 2 quarterbacks. The flip side of that, Tom Allen, Matt Guerrero both talked about that yesterday. Talked to some more players today, and got some stuff coming up. I talked to Scott Dolson as well after you interviewed him last week. You did a nice interview with him. Or was it 2 weeks ago? Either way, you talked to him, and I got him later that week. So some stuff from that as well.